Hey everybody, it's Callie, and today I want to talk about what should be our do's and don'ts when it comes to sticky OCD thoughts. I say should like that because I know that we do a lot of talking about accepting the thoughts or agreeing with the thoughts or even challenging the thoughts, but what does that actually look like in practice? Sometimes I think it's hard to visualize that, especially if you're in a moment where you're kind of on the spot because you're in the thick of it, you're getting the thoughts, you're having the obsessions, you're wanting to do the compulsions. You're kind of in a headspace where you just want it to get better immediately. It's kind of hard to think about doing things that in the short term could make it feel a little bit worse, but would actually help you in the long run. So I think that's something that we want to talk about today. The secret to that is actually something I've mentioned before, and that's to plan ahead. So let's start doing that. All of these tools and more are things that you would learn in ERP or exposure and response prevention therapy, but I know that that's something that not everyone has done yet, or not something that everybody is quite there in their OCD journey, because of course it is a journey. So I think it might be helpful for people to actually see it in action. So for the purpose of this, I'm going to use myself as an example, which I always do. And you guys know that I always struggle with harm OCD. That is always a thing that remains, even though other themes come in and out. I think a lot of the root of that is in harm, actually, because let's say I have some kind of worry about being a pedophile, or that I'm some kind of predator, or that I'm sexually deviant in some way, or whatever that means. A lot of that core in there is that I'm gonna hurt somebody, is that I'm gonna hurt a kid, I'm gonna hurt some other person, I'm gonna hurt, I don't know, an animal or somebody in a way that I don't want to, and obviously they don't want to be hurt, but it feels sometimes like you're going to be compelled to do that. It feels almost like you're right on the edge and you're saying, oh my God, I had that thought. Something popped into my head, some crazy thing. What does that say about me? What does that mean? Does that mean that I'm capable? Does that mean that I want to secretly do that? Does that mean that one day I won't be able to stop myself from doing that? What should I be doing to keep myself from doing that, right? All of these things, I just want to preface and say, all of these things are ego dystonic. They're not really in your character. They very much go against your character. You aren't somebody that wants to do those things. You've never done those things, or it's never been something that you've thought about in an appealing way, nothing like that. It's actually the fact that it is so upsetting to you that makes it stick around. Your brain that is just kind of misfiring with this OCD is saying, wait a minute, why are you feeling such a strong way about this? Is this something that we need to be worried about? Is this something that, I'll keep showing you. I want to make sure that this is something that you're still scared of, you're still worrying about. I'm just going to keep showing you. I'm going to keep bringing this up again. And that's how we get those intrusive thoughts that really stick around. It's really our brain just saying, wait a minute, we had a strong reaction to this. There must be a reason, but there really isn't a reason for that. It's kind of just how our brains are working. And it doesn't mean anything about you. It doesn't mean anything about what you're going to do, what you've done, your past, what your future is going to be. It doesn't mean anything like that. It just feels so strong. So then going back to what I said before, doing things like accepting those thoughts or agreeing with those thoughts or even challenging them feels really scary, because it feels like you're almost agreeing and letting the thing happen, when in fact what you're actually agreeing with is the fact that you had that thought. You're saying, yeah, I thought that, okay. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean that, I'm going to do anything. But then we have to take it a step further. So going back to my example with my harm OCD, let's say I have an intrusive thought that says I'm going to lose control and I'm going to hurt someone in my family. Let's say that that's my thought. So sometimes when we have those thoughts, I think it's almost more important to talk about what we shouldn't be doing than what we should do in that situation. So let's say I have that thought. Let's first talk about the don'ts. So what I don't want to do is exactly what I described before, which is that spiral of rumination, that downward tailspin that we let ourselves get into that looks like, oh my God, I had that thought. What does that mean? Does that mean that I'm a dangerous person? Does that mean that I'm capable of really hurting somebody? Does that mean that I hate this person? Does that mean that I want something bad to happen to this person? Should I be locked up? Should I tell this person that I don't want to see them anymore? Should I tell them to stay away from me because they'll be safe that way? This is all what we don't want to do. And we also don't want to ask somebody and say, hey, do you think I'm going to hurt somebody? Do you think I could ever do that? We also don't want to hide sharp objects. We don't want to avoid knives. We don't want to do things like that, because all of those things make those thoughts stronger. That all signals to your brain that this is important for some reason. It's gonna keep showing you this thought and keep saying, hey, are you still worried about this thing? Is this still something that I have to be on high alert for? That's what your brain is starting to think. So we wanna start sending signals to our brain that say, hey, like, I'm not scared of it anymore. It's all good. False alarm. Don't worry about it. We're good. So we talked about some of the don'ts, but what do we want to do? So when we're in this process of ERP, we don't want to jump in head first. We kind of want to dip our toe in. So we want to start by maybe just accepting that we had the thought and saying, yeah, you know what? I did think that. That's okay. It doesn't mean anything. It just is a thought, just like any other one that popped into my head. And it's normal that it might be upsetting even just to acknowledge that we had those thoughts, even to just accept that it's a possibility for such a heinous thought to come into our heads. And then you can wade out a little bit further and you can start to agree with the thoughts. You can start to say, yeah, you know what? Not only did I have that thought, but I'm going to agree that it's a possibility. I guess really at my core, I'm capable of doing anything, bad or good. So any thought that I have, sure, it's a possibility. You might agree and say, yeah, you know what? I could see that happening somehow. So what happens as you start to either accept or agree with these thoughts, your anxiety spikes a little bit and then it'll ebb and flow just like anything else, because you're showing your brain, even though it's upsetting to have these thoughts, nothing's really happening. And eventually, even though it feels like it might not happen, your anxiety does level out. It does come back down and you start to feel normal again. So as you progress in your ERP, you might even get to a point where you're going to challenge those thoughts, where you're going to try and one up your brain and really show it that you're in charge and the things that it's showing you, you're not afraid of anymore. So what that might look like, again, in my example, is I might say, yeah, you know what? Not only am I going to kill that one family member, I'm going to murder my whole family. So I know when I started ERP, knowing that eventually I was going to have to purposely call something like that to mind, purposely think about something like that, was unfathomable. I thought that that was something that I was never going to be able to do. I thought that that was going to be something that was going to push me over the edge. I thought it was going to be something that was going to make me realize that doing those bad things was something that I secretly wanted to do. Like somehow these intrusive thoughts were a peek into my subconscious or something, and that was showing me something that I really wanted to do. And that's just not the case. So again, when we're having those intrusive thoughts, what we don't want to do is to feed into them. We don't want to either ruminate or seek reassurance or avoid or do anything that is going to cement it in our mind that those are things that we should be afraid of. And what we do want to do is to start learning how to agree with the thoughts, accept them, and even eventually challenge them and really show our OCD that we're the ones in charge. Of course, I've talked before about ERP and how you can use ERP to eventually get to that point that you can accept those thoughts and agree with them and eventually challenge them and break free from the grip that OCD has on you. If ERP is something that you're ready to start thinking about for yourself, NOCD is a great place to start. Like I said before, ERP is the gold standard of treatment for OCD, and NOCD has therapists that are certified at administering that therapy so that people can find some relief from their OCD. So you can go to NOCD.com or treatmyocd.com today and find a therapist that can help you. On that note, I'm gonna get going and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.